The House Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Committee will come to order. Would the clerk please take attendance?
Chair Shannon.
Present.
Representatives McDonald.
Present.
Coleman. Conlon.
Present.
Farhat.
Present.
Fitzgerald.
Here.
Hoskins.
Here.
Miller. Here. Outman.
Here.
Roth.
Here.
Ruck.
Present.
Coons.
Here.
St. Germain.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 12 members present. You do have a quorum.
Thank you. I need a motion to adopt the minutes from last meeting, June 20th. Vice Chair McDonald makes that motion. Seeing no opposition, the minutes are adopted. Today we have a few things on the agenda. We'll be taking testimony on House Bills 4126, 4183, 4511, 4512, and 4308. So to get things started, we are going to bring up Representative Snyder, joined by John Lamacchia from the MML and Muskegon County Sheriff Michael Poulin on House Bill 4126. So thank you guys for coming in, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, Chair Shannon and members of the committee. I want to thank you for having me today to testify and speak on House Bill 4126. Not long after taking office, one of the first meetings my office had was with the Muskegon County Sheriff and the Norton Shores Police Department to speak about an issue in the speed limit section of the vehicle code that needed timely addressing. 9 months later, we find ourselves here today. I am joined this morning by Muskegon County Sheriff Michael Poulin, who serves as the Sheriff's representative on the Michigan Traffic Safety Advisory Commission. Later, we will also hear from John Lamacchia from the Michigan Municipal League. They will be able to speak further about the impacts and consequences from both the law enforcement side and municipal side if this bill is not passed. House Bill 4126 amends a section of the vehicle code that sets general speed limits for various place types. In this part, subsection E of section 627, it sets speed limits in certain residential areas. Those areas are defined as a public road that is part of a local street system as designated by a local jurisdiction and approved by the State Transportation Commission, and that is within land zoned for residential use by the governing body of a city or village under the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, unless other speed is established and posted. However, this specific subsection also has a sunset elimination date of January 1st, 2024. So it would be voided at the start of next year unless this bill is signed into law. My bill simply eliminates the sunset clause and then also eliminates a reference to a now passed speed study. This would make the language in question permanent. The sunset was part of Public Act 31 of 2019. As written, if this law does not get signed, it will require there to be an extensive speed studies conducted across the state in residential neighborhoods. This will likely increase the speed limit in residential zones across the state and require a vast proliferation of speed limit signs saying 25 miles throughout all communities. This would create a burden on municipalities and law enforcement. That would have to spend resources and money on the speed studies and then spend money on posting new signage. There is no basis to this plan in safety. It is purely bureaucratic burdens that will confuse motorists, decrease safety, waste money, and burden law enforcement. Thank you for your time, and I hope to have your support on House Bill 4126. I would now like to turn it over to Muskegon County Sheriff Mike Poulin.
Good morning, Committee Chair Shannon and members of the Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Committee. And thank you for this opportunity to speak today on behalf of House Bill 4126. As Sheriff of Muskegon County, I'm here today joining Representative Snyder and the other sponsors of this bill, along with the support of these associations, the Michigan Sheriff's Association, the Michigan Association Chiefs of Police, the Michigan State Police, the Michigan Municipal League, and County Roads Association of Michigan, to speak on my support of the current language of the Michigan Motor Vehicle Code, specifically MCL 257.627. Reverting back to the original language will unintentionally create situations where local communities with core residential streets would be required to have speed limits posted after a speed study. This action would be very expensive, time-consuming, and unnecessary for these types of streets to have always been 25 mile/hour residential zones. I can only imagine these small communities, frankly every community throughout the state, being required to conduct a speed study and then pay to post speed limit signs throughout neighborhoods. This would become especially in a residential area, this would become very confusing for a driver. When I look at the plan for the different speed limits, I can see driving through neighborhoods in my own community where the speed limit would move from 25 to 30, back to 25 again, while I'm still within a residential area. The other burden for law enforcement is that if these speed studies are not conducted, anytime a citation would be issued within these residential areas or in these areas, posted areas or non-posted areas, that ticket would not be valid. All right, if a person were to fight that citation, it would be dismissed by the court because the speed study would not have been conducted. I don't know that every community can afford this, especially the larger ones, for the amount of signage that would be needed. House Bill 4126 will eliminate the need and cost of unnecessary signs that will pollute our residential areas and help maintain consistency of speeds from block to block and residential local streets. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Shannon and members of the committee. Thank you to Representative Snyder for sponsoring this piece of legislation and Sheriff Pullen for being here to testify in support of it today. I just want to give a brief history of how we got to this point, just so we all understand why this correction is being made. Back in 2015 and 2016, we were working on some legislation dealing with actually increasing speed limits on limited access freeways. So you think of highways and things like that. And within the changes that were made to that, in the law at the time, residential speeds were set at 25 miles an hour. Everybody knows that. It's what we learned in driver's education. And then there was a small change that was made which talked about these 25-mile-an-hour residential zones and having a limited number of dedicated highways that serve as entrances and exits to them. And so if you think about more of a suburban neighborhood, they have limited numbers of entrances and exits, and that was kind of how we came up with that. It really ended up being an oversight when you think about a grid system inside of a city, which doesn't have these defined entrances and exits. They have a lot of, connections to, say, a major road and things like that. And so it eliminated that traditional grid system from being considered in the 25-mile-an-hour space, which is why we came back a few years ago, added this language that had the sunset component of it to ensure that we were meeting the intention of getting back to a grid system, being identified as residential, having that 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, not having to go through the situation the sheriff and Representative Snyder discussed with speed studies, posting more signage and doing that. As a result of that compromise that we were looking at then, the sunset got put in place. They did the study, and I think we've gotten to a point now recognizing that this is the appropriate way in which to handle residential speed limits, both in more urbanized areas and more rural areas. So for that, we support the legislation and hope that you do as well. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony. Looks like we do have a couple questions. We'll start out with Representative Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. Now, just so I'm getting this clear, so our neighborhood's going to be 25 mile an hour. We would just recognize that. And if we want to go into a park and it's a 15 mile, we're going to post that as 15, and vice versa. If we go up, if it goes from a residential to a business zone where it might be 35, then it would have to be signed at 35. But we're going to look at all our residential districts as 25 mile an hour, not have to be posted as that such with the signage. Am I understanding that mostly correctly?
That's correct. It's
Good.
keeping it the way it currently is.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you, guys.
Representative Outman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for being here to testify. John, you had kind of mentioned the history of this provision and the law change, but I still just need a little bit of clarity. So right now, we currently have a certain threshold for various speed definitions through residential neighborhoods based on various access points. For example, 30 miles per hour, 50 access points, but no more than 59. So that was the law change, but previous to that, it was always 25 through residential neighborhoods, no matter what.
Yeah,
So muddied the water with the law change, and now we're reverting back to the original way.
Couple of components here. So the access point model has existed prior to any changes that we made back in the 2015-16 point. really what that is looking at is more your primary roadways. So as you think about an access point, could be everything from a street to a driveway to an alley, and it is an alternative method for setting speed outside of doing a speed study. The residential component of this was always 25 miles an hour. It was intended to stay at 25 miles an hour, but when we defined it as limited entrances and exits, we unintentionally really eliminated the grid system from the residential space. And so that's why we came back and corrected that to ensure that we could basically keep status quo, put the sunset in place, and now we're eliminating that sunset. So nothing has really changed over the last decade plus. It's just making sure the law is reflective of the current situation and how we handle that.
Okay, then that does clear some things up for me. Now, does this coincide with Representative Slaw's legislation? And I don't know if you're familiar with that. That deals more with tweaking the 85th percentile method of determining a speed limit. Does this play a factor into that legislation at all, or totally separate issue?
So very, very aware of that legislation as well. I would say that it is complementary to that. So one, this is addressing, the need to continue doing what we're doing today in the elimination of the sunset. The SLAW bill is really about how we utilize the 85th and whether we define that as to be within or to the nearest number. And so we're really talking about making a change to be within the 85th percentile of speed that gives you flexibility up and down. While they are two very separate pieces of legislation, they are not tie-barred together in any way, but they are complementary of the local process which takes place around setting speed limits.
Yeah, because was it Representative Slaw's bill pertaining to the 85th percentile method, but this was some unforeseen things that weren't being picked up in like a speed study. I was kind of unclear on some of that stuff too. But
Yes.
these are just kind of complementary bills, not necessarily.
Yeah, and again, this bill has been around only 1 year. The SLAW bill has been through multiple iterations and actually multiple sponsors in that particular case. And that one is really intended to deal not just with residential space, but how we think about speed limits overall. So again, not tied in any way directly with the tie bar, but complementary in terms of how we think about local control around setting
Gotcha.
speeds.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Any other questions? Well, I'll just say we will be taking this up next week for a vote. I like the current system, and I think that this is fairly common sense, and I imagine that we'll get it through next week. So thank you once again, gentlemen, for coming up and testifying today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I do have some cards to read in. Sergeant Travis Fletcher from the State Police supports the bill, does not wish to speak. Stephanie Johnson of the Michigan Association Chiefs of Police supports the bill, does not wish to speak. Matt Saxton from the Michigan Sheriff's Association supports the bill, does not wish to speak. Mike Spence from the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments supports the bill, does not wish to speak. The League of Michigan Bicyclists support the bill, does not wish to speak. Ed Noyola from the County Road Association of Michigan supports the bill, does not look like he wants to speak. Okay, good, Ed? Okay. All right. Well, thank you on that one. Okay. So next up, we'll be taking up House Bill 4183. We'll have Representative Roth join us down at the table there. He will be joined by John Russell from the Twin Bay British Car Club to testify on the bill.
Good morning. Thank you for taking time to listen to my little spiel here. In 1949, excuse me.
Do you mind if I just stop you 1 second? I would like to give deference to the representative to have his comments, and then we'll jump to you if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good morning, John.
All right. Sorry about that. Sorry about the confusion on that one. So thank you, Representative Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the time to spend with you folks today, as we do every time we have transportation. But this is a pretty simple bill, but I wanted to express many new members here. This bill did pass the House last term, 109-1. Now, my one no vote, it didn't show up to committee today. Got to give him a little bit of hard time. The good representative and I have the same constituent back home that says if it's not 100% historical vehicle, I mean, you can't touch it. then you shouldn't be able to classify as one. That's a whole separate issue, and that doesn't have anything to do with the bill. So I understand the good representative's question about the bill. So just wanted to make sure you knew that. It did die in the Senate, didn't get a hearing, and unfortunate. But we're here again. I don't have to tell you guys that this is the car state, right? We are Michigan. We are the car state. We love our cars. They're old and new. Currently, if your car is 25 years or older, you pay a $30 fee for 10 years. It's valid for 10. These are cars that aren't just going to be driven on the road all the time, every day. It's limited if most people that I've met, though it is. I've gone to a lot of car shows to kind of see what people are thinking out there. There's some people that want to drive their classic cars year-round, but I would say about half of those people do not. They take very good care of them. They only drive them when it's nice weather and that kind of thing. And currently, it's only allowed to drive your classic car in the month of August, as some of our representatives didn't understand that and been driving when they're not allowed to. We want to make sure that this is legal for them to drive in the good months. So it was developed for the great, what's the name of the cruising club downstate? Woodward Cruising Club is what this law was designed for. And it's good for the month of August only. And even with that, you're only allowed to drive the car to and from a show, a parade, some kind of a showing of the car. You're not able to go get ice cream for the fun of it, right, John? This is going to change that. Secretary of State is not against it. She supported it last term, that we do this from Memorial Day to Labor Day. And you can go get ice cream if you want during that time. So I think it's worthwhile. Mr. Russell is here from the Twin Bay British Car Club, and they brought this to my attention a couple years ago, and we're hoping to get this through this term. Hey, Mr. Russell, if you want to take it away, Chair, if that's all right.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I appreciate the time for the committee to listen to this. 1949, they decided there had to be historic license plate restrictions, partly because after the war, a lot of people had old cars and they were only paying $5 for a plate forever. It's changed a lot in the last few years. There are 14 states that don't have any restrictions at all on classic cars, classic or historic vehicles. In 2011, with the restrictions on historic vehicles in Michigan, a lot of people that were in the Woodward Dream Cruise were ticketed by the Royal Oak Police because it technically wasn't a car show. So the information went to Senator Mike Kowal, the 15th District, and the senator passed this amendment to the law that says the month of August is a free month for you to drive your car as an exhibition vehicle. I contacted the senator, and he actually called me, and we talked about it and thought, we're the automotive capital of the world. We should be able to drive our cars as we wish without restrictions. He was term limited out along with my senator, Howard Walker. So everything slowed down a little bit. And of course, then we have elections and all the other more important things that the Senate and the House have to work with. But we've been pursuing it slowly, and Mr. Roth was very kind to listen to our spiel and agreed with us. As he pointed out, we don't drive our cars in bad weather. We don't drive them every day. I have a 70-year-old MG that I'd like to drive and take my wife to buy ice cream, which I can do in the month of August, but the rest of the summer I can't. So Representative Roth and I talked about it. He agreed and put together the House bill. And we're just hoping that we can drive our cars legally from Memorial Day to Labor Day. We don't have to worry about driving in the spring or the fall because we have club events or our cars are being worked on either before or after storage. And it's something that we'd very, very seriously like to be able to do legally. So I appreciate the time to discuss this with all of you. Owners of classic and historic vehicles, we love our vehicles. I've had my MG for 55 years. I've had 4 other antique cars. They were all Model A's and one Model T. Many classic and historic car people have more than one car. And, you know, if you can drive it legally through the summer, you can drive all those cars individually whenever you please. I'm not sure if there are any questions. I'm certainly willing to listen for it and answer any that anybody might have.
Looks like we have one question. Representative Outman.
Yeah, just one quick question. So, currently at the beginning of summer, like June and July, in order to comply with the law and you have a historical plate, do you have to like trailer your car to a like car show or something like that?
That would be the law, yes, today.
Okay.
You can't actually drive it to the show, no.
Gotcha. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Representative St. Germain.
Hi, Representative. He's my favorite. What are the objections in the first place? Why can't classic cars, be driven whenever we want to? And I also have to give a shout out to. I grew up 20 minutes. Well, I'm still there. 20 minutes northeast of Detroit, and I have to give a shout out to Cruising Gratiot. If anybody's ever cruised Gratiot.
I think, and John might be able to add to this, but I know that, you know, it's another vehicle on the road at a very cheap price. I think there was concerns from the Secretary of State's office, not just our current one, but before, that you have much more cars on the road doing more potential damage to the roads for a very cheap price. I think that was part of it, but I think, I don't know, John, if you have any history that's more than that.
I mean, I don't see the problem. You know, personally, I like classic cars.
Well, I absolutely classic cars on the road. We are the state that built the cars, and why shouldn't we be showing them off? But I don't know, John. Do you have any history more than that for not allowing them to be on the road more?
Well, I can only drive one car at a time, and historically, a lot of us will drive our cars on back roads. I don't take my MG on any major highways if I don't need to, because number one, I'm probably on a tour or a rally just to enjoy driving the car. It's quite different from a modern car, including the fact I can put the windscreen down. So I drive back roads quite a bit, and I don't see that as any problem. I know my MG weighs a lot less than my Grand Cherokee, and you know, driving it, I don't see ever have an issue. I never, in 55 years of having this car, been pulled over by a police officer for any infractions. I once pulled over once by a constable who wanted to know what kind of a car it was.
That's usually the case, yep.
No other questions? Representative Bruck.
Thank you. So is a historical plate, because I have a historical vehicle without a historical plate, I think, but is it a one-time plate fee? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's
okay.
it's a 10-year plate.
Oh, 10-year plate, okay.
For that $30, yep.
Okay. And the purpose of limiting it from Memorial Day to, what was it? Labor Day.
We obviously we would have loved to gotten half a year, you know, but I think it makes the most sense that we do it Memorial Day through Labor Day. That's when most of the classic cars are driven. The weather's more appropriate for it. Yeah, I don't know too many people that want to drive their historical vehicle in the winter, obviously in the snow. And if they do buy a year-round plate now. So that was what I found in the shows that I went to. I would say some shows it was 50-50 between a historical plate and a regular plate. Just kind of depend on how much they wanted to drive that vehicle. So we just thought the months of summer were made the most sense for people to drive their classic cars. Maybe somewhere down the road we'll try and get 6 months out of it, but the Secretary of State was fully on board, so I didn't want to push anything. Get it done.
Thank you.
Well, I will agree with Representative St. Germain. I like classic cars. I like seeing them on the road. It's always interesting to drive by one. And also, this would put me in really good favor with my neighbor, who is a classic car enthusiast. So I think we can get this one done this time around. So I thank you for your testimony. Thank you, John, on Zoom, and thank you, Representative Roth.
Thank you.
I do have one card to read in regarding Secretary of State. They are neutral on the bill and do not wish to speak. All right, make sure I'm in order here. So moving on to House Bills 4511 and 4512, we have Representative Fitzgerald and Representative Reingans. Thank you for joining us, representatives. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Shannon, members of the Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Committee, and thank you, all of you, for having us here today. I am here today with Rep. Fitzgerald to discuss our bills, HBs 4511 and 4512. These bills would have Michigan join most other states in having safer car seat standards for safer kids. This package of bills would amend the Michigan Vehicle Code to update the safety standards for children's car seats and booster seats and bring them into alignment with our most up-to-date federal and industry recommended standards. And this would help make sure that kids are safe while we're driving on our roads. The last time our guidelines were updated was 2008 or 9. It was somewhere in there. As a result, we are only one of a handful of states that do not have guidelines matching or exceeding the industry and federal standards. These bills would provide car seat and booster seat safety standards for children across age, but also, more importantly, height and weight standards. We want to make sure our laws reflect what pediatricians are already telling us and telling parents about what they're seeing in car seat packaging. My bill, the HB 4511, actually spells out the standards. Today, I'm here as one of Michigan's lawmakers, but I am also a mom to my first grade daughter, who will be 7 next month. And we've been going back and forth for a couple years now about which car seat she wants to be in versus which one is safest. And so obviously I don't need a law to fight my daughter and put her in the proper car seat, but I know that it is confusing for parents like me, and sometimes kids listen if you say, well, it's the law too. So that's another reason, but it's not the most important reason I'm doing this. So we have moved her, since she is the height and weight recommendation, to the larger car seat, the booster seat. She is able to fit in there safely. So I just wanted to point that out. This is why I'm doing this, not just because I love the nerd regulations of car seats, but also because it is safer for our kids. And as a mom, this is important to me. So thank you very much. And I hope that you will vote yes at some point when this comes up for a vote on 4511 and 4512. And now I'll turn it over to Rep. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Representative, and thank you, Chair, for allowing us to testify today in support of these bills. My bill 4512, I think, really speaks to, the spirit of this law, which is that this is intended to be educational for parents and caregivers, that it is not intended to be punitive, but rather when you have a child who may be graduating to a new seat, there's a lot of information about which seat, which harness that they might be best suited for. And again, height and weight is really what we want to get at. This physics does not care how old you are in a car accident, but it does care how tall and how heavy you are. And so to ensure that parents are educated about what seat is best suited for their child, we want to increase awareness to these laws. And part of that awareness building is done in 4512. There's a $10 civil penalty, civil fine, that could be waived should a proper seat be purchased, be actually acquired is the new language that is in 4512. It used to be purchased or rented, and now that just simply says acquired. That there's also a point where you would engage with a car seat technician. That person would be able to educate you about the proper fitting seat. They would be able to educate you about the graduating levels that that child may need as they continue to grow and age. And it would, again, move to the point where that civil penalty would be waived, that there would not be a financial burden placed on the parent or the caregiver, but rather that it would be an acknowledgement that they've been educated, that they've acquired the correct equipment, and that those children are transported safely. Like Representative Reingans, I too am a young father to a 9-month-old daughter. We're going to be hitting some of these milestones. In fact, in 9 months, we have reached one of those milestones because my daughter is beautiful and tall and wonderful in all of her young ways. She's just such a blessing, and I want to make sure that her safety is my first and top priority. So this is really, I think, again, an educational opportunity for parents and caregivers in the state of Michigan, and an opportunity to make sure our children are safe while traveling the roads of Michigan.
Okay, looks like we do have a couple questions here. Representative Outman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you both for being here and presenting this. I do have a little bit of firsthand experience when it comes to this. My aunt was involved in a fatal car accident where she actually didn't make it, but my gosh, I think she was around 10 or 11 months at the time. Younger cousin, survived, properly strapped into our car seats. These things do work if properly installed and whatnot. But I do have a couple of questions, and I think you briefly touched on this, Rep. Reinigans, and that is how do these bills align with our national safety standards and best practices for child passenger safety, if you will?
So we do have a few other folks here to testify who are, safety seat inspectors, and they can talk more about specifics. But what we're trying to do is clarify, adding in more specific weight and height requirements and minimums here in Michigan, which before we were, a lot of parents were focused more on the age than the weight and height requirements. So I don't know if one of the other testifiers wants to add more detail to this, but.
Okay, and we'll wait for some further testimony. And then can you briefly just kind of share some insights into the collaborative efforts, between government agencies, child safety advocates, and I guess any other stakeholders in the development of these bills?
Yes. Do you want to?
No, go ahead.
So there's been a coalition with pediatricians and state police and others for years that have been working on trying to make sure our standards as a state match the minimum standards of industry and of the federal regulations. So I guess they've been working together probably since the last time there was a car seat update, but I know in earnest when this bill was introduced in 2017 it made it out of the House but not out of the Senate.
Okay. Could I ask one more question, Mr. Chair? Please do. And this one is in regards to your bill in specific, 4512, I believe. And you briefly touched on this, but it wasn't really clearly spelled out in the bill. Could you just kind of touch on how the inclusion of a certified child passenger safety technician, what role they're going to play in, I guess, the waiver of civil fines and car seat violations that are kind of spelled upon in 4512?
That's a great question. So just maybe as a little background as well, I checked with my local police department about the access to one of these technicians. We have 2 that are in our police department. So this is done at your local municipality, potentially your county sheriff, potentially your county health department, and other places as well. So access to these qualified technicians is available kind of in the broader community. There would be basically an acknowledgement. I would expect and suspect that as this passes, that there would be a collaboration between law enforcement and the technician to provide some sort of acknowledgement, if not simply a verbal acknowledgement in the court system when this is waived, to say, have you received the education from the car seat technician, in which case that person would acknowledge, yes, we did receive that education. So I suspect that will be, we didn't want to prescribe this. We wanted to make sure that this was something that would suit each local, that this would be something that could, again, be best suited to the penalty and, again, the locality.
Sure. Well, thank you for entertaining my questions, and again, thank you for both being here.
Next, we have Representative Conlon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, representatives, for testifying today on these important bills. I'm of the age where my mother and father brought me home from the hospital in a wicker basket, so we're very happy that doesn't happen anymore. But I'm wondering about access. These car seats are so expensive. I remember with my 3 children, who are now grown. But so if you were, penalized for this and you have this technician, will there be, let's say you do have your child not in a car seat, what will happen then? Are you going to be followed by the police officer to a store, or do we know what will come of that? And how are we going to ensure that hopefully people can get a car seat without spending hundreds of dollars?
Yeah, so I can start by addressing that. So no, you would not be followed by a police officer to a store or a retailer of your choice to acquire that seat. As I mentioned, we just went through this process. I will tell you that you're not wrong. The MSRP on a number of these harnesses are expensive. There are a number of public programs that help to reduce the cost of those. There are also individual retailer specials that go on very, very frequently. Black Friday, I'll tell you that safety seats and strollers are always on sale. I think we got ours on online retailers' annual big sale day through the summer, and I'm sure that many could guess where we acquired those. Target, I believe, also does a trade-in day where you can take an outdated seat and try to trade that in at a Target and actually get a certain amount off of your next seat. So we actually see public-private partnership actually working well to make sure that access to these seats is not a hurdle to the safety of our children.
And I know many nonprofits, especially youth and family-focused nonprofits, do help with assistance for paying for these as necessary too. So many places in my own community in Washtenaw County, there are some child and family-focused groups that can help people purchase car seats as well.
Representative Kuntz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you both for coming today. The part of the bill that concerns me, and Representative Fitzgerald, you said it better than I could have. Physics doesn't care how old you are, but we have an age limit in here. Why the age 13? Let's just go with the height and weight and keep it simple.
Do you have kids?
2.
Do you know how much they weigh
2.
right now?
Allegedly 2. I do both. Well, they both play sports, so yeah.
It kind of
yeah,
fluctuates, right? Yeah, that I think that's part of where we were coming from, because we both looked at each other and tried to figure out how much our kid was at the moment and realized we'd have to go figure that out. So I think the age limit tends to be more on the upper edge, so that way it's more likely your kid will be in the proper weight and height limits. So that's why we do keep an age in there, because more parents do know their kid's age, but we prefer us included. I mean,
Right.
like,
No, right.
so I think it was more to be helpful to parents, but we do still want people to focus on the height and weight limits. And this actually made me go back and stand my kid up against a wall and double check everything.
And if I might, Representative, you know, I think that in this case as well, this is also providing pediatricians with better guidelines and outlines that should you have, you know, a teenager or a preteen who is maybe a smaller than average size, that they would be consulting with their pediatrician about what the best way to transport that child would be. What is the best seat for them to be in? While it may not be required at 14, and if you are smaller, that you'd ride in a booster seat, your pediatrician might still be having that that conversation with you.
Right. I try not to make it all about me, Mr. Chairman, if I may. I try not to make it all about me. My son was 6 foot on his 12th birthday. So to argue that I'm going to stuff him in the back seat, he's not going to have it. So this is where I think I don't like the age requirement. Let's stick to the height and weight. But I see what you're saying. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I don't know the weights of my children, so I have a sense. But Representative Bruck.
Thank you both, representatives, for being here. It's no secret I have 9 children, so we have had our share of how do you fit kids in vehicles. But earlier I also mentioned I also have a historical. It's an '85 F-250 with an extended cab, and it has the back seats, very small, to fit my 13-year-old back there. Plus, they're just lap belts in the back. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm assuming, I'm going to make an assumption, the whole reasoning behind a 13-year-old or 4, 9, whatever, in the back seat is because of airbags, I'm assuming.
I think this would be the best answered by our experts.
Okay, but that would be my assumption. It has to be an airbag thing. I mean, airbags have caused a lot of hardships for children and car seats and the way they're faced, etc. I would like to see an exception for vehicles that do not have car seats airbags, you know, in the front. I think that for my position as a parent, if I take my smaller child or my teenage child, they're safer in the front seat with a lap belt versus back seat with just with the chest belt and the lap belt versus just the lap belt in the back seat.
I'd like to just add too, in response, which is in looking at a number of these harnesses. Again, we just went shopping for these fairly recent ago. There are also lap belt only options for some of these harnesses that it doesn't require anchoring, which is in many of our modern vehicles today. The anchors that you see, the clips go into the kind of the seam of the seat. There are also options for a full personal safety belt, the 3-point harness to allow for a child safety seat to be restrained properly, and also a lap belt option as well. It's also becoming much more popular in urban settings that these manufacturers are also making them so that they can go into an Uber quickly and then out of an Uber quickly. And so that lap belt option is also part of the kind of the engineering and the advancement of these systems as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
And you gave me a bit of a fright thinking back to when I would have to, with the big car seats that you had to anchor. Trying to anchor those things is the worst.
Good thing we have technicians now, right?
Yeah, that's true. And I know in the city of Sterling Heights, you can bring it to the police station and they'll make sure that it gets installed properly. So that's something that we should publicize more. Representative Roth.
Just a little comic relief. The age 13 thing isn't just for the young, it's for the old too. I've got a cousin that's 4'9", and she may never get past the limit, so she would prefer to sit in the front seat at times. So, and channeling my Beau LaFave from last year, who was complaining about this too. So, that's part of the reason for the age too.
And I think one of our experts will talk a little bit about this, but adults, even if they're fully grown at 4'9", have the muscles and body structure that is built for their body, whereas a kid who isn't fully developed, even if they're the same size, might not have the same muscle. So that's another reason.
Okay. There aren't any other questions. Thank you so much. We do have some, as the representative was saying, that we do have some experts that are going to come up and testify on these bills also. So thank you, representatives. I don't know if you wanted to stay up there or not. It's up to you. But continuing with House Bill 4511 and 4512, we have Lou Moquin. Am I saying that right? Okay. Lou Moquin, a certified child passenger safety technician instructor. Thank you for joining us, Lou. The floor is yours.
As mentioned, my name is Lou Moquin. I am a certified child passenger safety technician instructor. I actually teach the technicians. It's a 4-day class. And this is our busy time of year, but it's kind of winding down. But this month marks my 25th year working in child passenger safety. I worked at Hurley Medical Center, and I'm a founding member of Safe Kids Greater Flint. Hurley Medical Center was and still is the lead organization for this group. Upon my retirement from Hurley in 2015, I was asked and accepted a position in the Pediatric Trauma Injury Prevention Department at Mott Children's Hospital in Ann Arbor. Mott Children's is the lead organization for Safe Kids Huron Valley. I operate 2 permanent car seat inspection stations in Flint, one at the Lenore Crowdy Family Life Center on the campus of Mott Community College, and the other at Genesee Health Plan. When I began my work back in 1998, it was legal to place a 13-month-old child in a lap belt. On May 26th of 1999, Public Act 29 of 1999 was signed into law and increased the age of a child who was required to be in a car seat to 4 years. Further changes were made over the years. Our last improvement to keep children safer in a vehicle, and the last time I spoke here was in 2008 when the state of Michigan added booster seat language to our law. Over my 25 years, I've checked thousands of car seats and educated an equal number of caregivers on how to keep their children safer while being transported in their car. Having now worked at 2 hospitals, one a level 2 Peds Trauma Center and the other a level 1 Pediatric Trauma Center, I have seen firsthand the outcomes, both good and bad, that happen to kids in car crashes. In my time, the most asked question a caregiver has asked me is, what is our state law? Thinking that if they follow the law, their children will be safest. I've been asked this so often that I have our current law on the back of my business card. Our current law does not mention anything about rear-facing a child in a car seat. The proposed legislation would require a child to be rear-facing in the appropriate seat for height and weight until the age of 2 years. This position is biomechanically safer by protecting the child's head, neck, and spinal cord much better and longer. Car seat manufacturers have also heard from consumers. Many of them have created car seats that rear face to 40, 50, and even 55 pounds and are readily available. 18 states and the District of Columbia now have language in their law requiring children to be rear-facing until the age of 2. I'd like to see our state be number 20. And I do have some answers to some of the questions the representatives had in regards to acquiring car seats. especially for those that are most at risk. The state of Michigan, through the Office of Highway Safety Planning, has had for a number of years a program that any technician or instructor in the state of Michigan can order as many car seats as they have storage room for and issue those to low-income families. Then there's a whole list of programs that qualify. And one of them is if they've been referred by a law enforcement agency. So if that does come to pass, they can reach out to any certified technician or instructor in the state and make an appointment. And I do home visits. I scheduled one this morning. The way I'm dressed like this, I'm at the GM plant, Flint Assembly. They have their safety day today. So I've already been busy talking about car seat safety to a group of shop workers in Flint. And as soon as I'm done here, I'm going back. There was a question about airbags and something about placing children in the front seat. Of course, we never want to see a child rear-facing in front of an active airbag. But the reason for that 13 years, and this is my opinion, is it's more of a developmental issue for children. You don't want a toddler up in the front seat that is in front of an active airbag, especially if they're not in a car seat at all. Our current law states that children under the age of 16 in the rear seat need to be belted, and every occupant in the front seat needs to be belted regardless of age, in a car seat or a seat belt. But if you have any more questions, I'm ready to ask or answer them.
Well, I thank you for answering the couple questions that the representatives had prior to this. Are there any other pressing questions right now? Okay. Representative Kuntz.
I do thank you for not just the work you did in Flint, but for coming here today. I'm still stuck on the 13. Why does it matter?
There was a case years ago where a 12-year-old was in the front seat in a seatbelt, and mom was driving down the road, and she was playing with something and happened to drop it on the floor, went down to pick it up, and the child didn't know it, but the mom was ready to be involved in a frontal crash. That airbag deployed while the child was bent over trying to pick up the thing they dropped in the front seat, and suffered a fatal injury to her spinal cord. So my grandchildren, I have 5 of them, and I have one who was over 6 feet tall at 11 years of age. So in smaller vehicles, he had no choice but to sit in the front seat. But my grandkids grew up with car seats as being part of their culture. So sitting in the front seat doesn't pose any problem for him. But I think it's more of a behavioral issue with a smaller child that fidgets a lot and may actually come out of their shoulder belt, and now they're at risk for injury if there were a crash to their lower abdominal area.
Thank you.
I can tell that Representative Kuntz isn't quite satisfied with the answer, which is fine. But if possible, maybe the sponsors of the bill could maybe get with Kuntz and have a discussion about the age. Okay. Representative Bruck.
And again, I'm going back to the front seat airbags. If there were no airbags, is the back seat any safer than the front seat?
The larger percentage of crashes that drivers will be in, there is some frontal component to it. So the closer you are to the point of impact, the more danger there is for the occupant in the vehicle. If we could drive from the back seat, we would. But yeah, the closer you are to that point of impact, the more at risk you are for injury and possibly a fatal crash. So I think that
and age or slash size being a factor in that.
Well, yeah, we don't want to put any child in the front seat unless we absolutely have to. I've done it, but we usually pick the child that we can restrain the best. So we wouldn't necessarily put a child in a booster seat in the front seat. It would be the child in a 5-point harness, and we would try to move that front seat as far back as possible to get away from that airbag.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to take the last question here, and I'm just being a little facetious here, but what is the trick to getting those darn anchors in? I'm literally laying over it, getting all my weight on it to get it as tight to the back of the seat. So,
I do make home visits.
well, fortunately, I don't have those types of seats
Okay.
any longer. So,
Yeah, there are different styles of those lower anchors. Some are push-on, some have that. The more popular is a hook.
like a clip,
And,
yes.
and you can turn it sideways to get it in between that crack of the seat, and then turn it.
Where were you 5 years ago?
I was doing this.
Well, thank you so much, Lou. I really do appreciate your testimony today. But we do have we do have a bit of a time issue here, so we still have two more presenters, and then we have another bill that we need to take up. So we're going to move on. Thank you once again. Next is Dr. Brittany Taylor, pediatrician from the Michigan chapter of American Academy of Pediatrics, and would like to give testimony on the two bills. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you for having me here today. I'm going to start by answering some of those questions that you were talking about.
That would be great.
So for 13, the reason that it is that way is that around 8 to 12 years old, pretty much the median height of 4'9" is going to be reached. So when you get to 13, you're most likely going to be above that 4'9". Of course, there are some adults that are still going to be really short. I mean, I'm 5'8", so I don't have to worry about that. But again, they're adults. They can make a decision on their own, and they do have to drive their car. So it does have to do about the mechanics of sitting in the car. So when you're a certain 4'9" height, you actually are able to have your femur go all the way to the edge of the seat and be able to put yourself down. And so I'm not a physicist, I'm just a doctor. It helps in the impact to pull forward and then pull back on it. So you can actually, your legs end up being part of the leverage that keeps you stable with that seat. So the age of 13 is there just because usually, again, everyone's going to be at 4'9" at that point. That answers that question. And then in terms of rear-facing seat, being in the rear, it's the recommendation that there is an airbag in place if you're going to be driving with someone under the age of 18, 16. That's the American Academy of Pediatrics guidelines. And being in the rear, as he was alluding to, is safer. It is safer in all regards, and so that's why we recommend under the age of 13. Under the age of 16 is actually the AAP guidelines. We understand at 16, kids do start to do something else that's even scarier on the roads. So we ended it at that point, but it is safer no matter what. Apologies. So as kind of alluded to, sorry, I could have started with this. I'm Dr. Brittany Taylor. I'm a pediatrician in Flint. Woo! So today I'm speaking on behalf of the Michigan chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics in support of House Bills 4511 and 4512. These bills make really important updates to our laws regarding car seat usage in Michigan. The underlying basis of the legislation is clear. Motor vehicle accidents are the second leading cause of death in children in the United States. Studies show that when compared to seat belts, car seats reduce the risk of injury by 71 to 82%. In addition, booster seats reduce the risk by 45%. As a pediatrician, a huge part of my job is doing prevention. I counsel parents on a lot of different risks for the children, including the age-appropriate use of car seats. As many of you have already alluded to, being a parent and a guardian can be an exceptionally overwhelming time. It's very difficult to navigate all of the best practices to keep your child safe, and it makes it even more difficult that our state law is out of step with the guidelines of the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration, as well as the AAP and the recommendations of the car seat manufacturers themselves. So I want to tell you a little story too about a patient I cared for previously. I am boarded in internal medicine, so it means that I take care of adults as well. During this time, I cared for a 24-year-old mother for several weeks to almost a couple months following a car accident. She lost the lower right half of her arm. She had a brain bleed that required emergency surgery. She broke her femur. She required multiple reconstructive facial surgeries and had several crushed spinal vertebrae that left her partially paralyzed. I distinctly remember her own mother coming and feeding her a blenderized Thanksgiving dinner. She had an agonizingly slow recovery with her husband dying in the car accident, as well as the family dog. Her daughter, who was in the appropriate car seat, was released from the hospital with a broken clavicle the following day from the accident, one day. I cannot overstate how important that car seat was in protecting that little girl's life. As pediatricians, we understand that patient and family education is so important to keeping our kids safe. Similarly, these bills do the same thing, that they encourage compliance by taking an approach that's non-punitive. They allow sanctions to be waived if the driver undergoes educational training related to this. Again, our focus remains on keeping kids safe, not collecting fines. The technology of car seat restraints and their research has improved immensely over the past few years. Unfortunately, our state law is not up to date with that. Bringing our law into harmony with this will help keep our kids safe and prevent more motor vehicle accidents.
Well, thank you, Doctor, so much for your testimony. As I said before, we are in a bit of a time crunch, so if you have a pressing question, feel free to ask it. If not, we will go on to the next presenter for the next testimony. Everybody's good? Okay. Thank you so much for coming in today. Really do appreciate it. Next is Matthew Gezequel. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. 24-year veteran police officer, firefighter with the Saginaw Thumb Area Safe Kids Group. And did I get close to your last name?
Gezequel, but close.
Gezequel. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you. As he said, I've been a police officer for 24 years. I work for the city of Sandusky out in the thumb of Michigan. I've been there literally for all 24 years of my career. I did start off in Saginaw County working with William Gutzwiller there, which got me into doing the car seats. I am also a certified technician instructor as well. I've been doing that for 20 plus years now. As far as this bill goes, looking at how this law is wrote and the adjustments that are being made, this is all for the safety of the family, okay? As far as enforcement goes, the enforcement has not changed, okay? As far as officers pulling people over for this, very rarely are police officers actually making stops because a child isn't in a car seat. The only time that truly happens is when you can see the kid jumping around in the back seat, okay? 90% of the time, that's a secondary part of our stop. As a matter of fact, the people that would make this stop or be able to enforce this law are either technicians or have taken a 4-hour class on how to enforce Michigan law. The reason I know this is I helped write that 4-hour class. This class is not taught greatly, okay? There are not that many officers that are capable of going out and enforcing this law as well as it should be. I truly wish more were able to take this course. The reason behind this is you have to have knowledge of what the car seat looks like, what the child, approximate age, approximate height. You have to be able to guess that when you're going up to a car. Without having had these trainings, you don't have that capability. So as far as this law being used to harass people or anything along that lines, it's not going to change the number of times this law has been used, okay? I know personally when we were out on seatbelt enforcement, the state police have me literally sit off to the side of the road. I don't get to make traffic stops where everybody else is making all the traffic stops. I get called to every traffic stop that has a child seat in it. Why? Because I may be able to educate the parent. 90% of the time when I'm on the side of the road with a parent, I will educate them there. I will do a car seat check if I need to. Why? Because it's safer. The ticket doesn't matter. It's the child's safety. That's why I'm here. Now, I can tell you, as a father, okay, the last time I was in this, well, wasn't in this room, but the last time I testified to one of these committees, my 7-year-old son was sitting next to me. He's 22 now. So, he's no longer in a booster seat either. But in his case, I'll be honest with you, it was kind of, I felt bad for the poor little guy. He didn't outgrow his booster seat till the age of 12. Now, my daughter outgrew it at 10. Why? Just because they're just different little people, okay? But I can also tell you, as a parent, the last thing anyone ever wants to go through is the loss of a child, okay? I've already been there. So I can tell you from experience, no one wants to go through that, okay? no officer wants to be at that scene. I go to every child death review in our county. The ones that involve a car seat or a car crash are the hardest ones for me because we've been there. In most cases, I was probably at the scene, okay? In Sanilac County, a normal day shift for us, there's 2 deputies, possibly a state trooper, myself as a city officer, and I may be sent to God knows where to help if there's a severe crash. So I can tell you, having been at those scenes, it's not something any of us want to deal with. This law, bringing us up to the same standard as our national standard and what the AAP recommends, truly just brings up the safety of all the children. That's all this is about.
Well, thank you so much for your testimony, and thank you for your service and the work that you do that very few people in this state, in this country could do. Some of the things you've witnessed are unspeakable, I'm sure. So thank you for that. Any questions? Yes, of course. Yes, Representative Ottman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Officer, thank you for being here. In regards to being on the scenes of accidents that involve the death of a child, can you tell, or maybe you're not able to, but in the vast majority of those instances, was it a improperly installed car seat, or are you not able to even?
I can tell you from the ones that I've been at, there were several incidences where there was no car seat. There were a few where it was the improper car seat. We had a 3-year-old that was in a booster seat. The child was not, at the time, mentally capable of being in that seat. His body was physically capable of it by the standards of the lower parameters of the seat, but his mental capacity was not there, so he was not seated in it properly. He could have still been in a seat with a harness, and he quite possibly could have survived that crash. So it all depends on the scene. I've been at scenes, and I can tell you, I will give you one that, from personal experience. We were in the crash, minivan heading east, construction trailer coming the other way. Construction trailer came off the truck it was attached to, took out the minivan. We got on scene, had to crawl through the back window, and we're passing children out in car seats. And got the one little guy, cut him out of his seatbelt because the van was upside down, got them out, had to wait for the helo to land and also for the fire to cut the mother out of the vehicle. Now, this incident took place, would have been 9 years prior to me meeting the little guy who I passed out from the booster seat, who proceeded to tell me that he really wanted to thank me because, according to his mom, we saved their lives. They were at my car seat check in February. This crash happened in June. He wasn't supposed to be, he had not been in a booster seat until we gave him one. So, can I say that we've done different things? Yes. That right there was the most impactful thing I can say I've done. So, yes, it all mattered. Everything depends on the crash.
Sure. Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you.
That's an incredible story. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Jezequel.
Thank you.
I do have some cards to read in. Sergeant Travis Fletcher of the State Police supports the bill, does not wish to speak. Kevin McKinney from Michigan Osteopathic Association supports the bill, does not wish to speak. Matt Black from the Michigan Academy of Family Physicians supports the bill, does not wish to speak. Kate Dorsey from the Michigan State Medical Society supports the bill, does not wish to speak. Amy Zagman, Michigan Council for Maternal and Child Health, supports the bill, does not wish to speak. And then finally we have, I'm sorry, where's the name? Oh, Heather Nikoloff supports the bill from the Michigan Council of Nurse Practitioners, supports the bill, does not wish to speak. So thank you for testimony on that, those two bills. We are going to move on. So next up, and thank you for your patience. I really do appreciate it, Rep. Next up, we have Representative O'Neill discussing House Bill 4308. And the floor is yours, Rep. And we have also, I should say that that we do have Preston Peterson from Peterson Consultants and his brother, former Representative Ronnie Peterson, testifying in support of 4308. Welcome back, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of this committee. It is a pleasure to be with you today in Transportation Committee to discuss this important legislation. This legislation would create a license plate to raise funds for sickle cell anemia research and awareness. Sickle cell disease is a genetic condition that is present at birth. It is inherited when a child receives 2 sickle cells, one gene from each parent. Sickle cell causes changes in red blood cells. With this disorder, there are not enough healthy red blood cells to carry oxygen throughout the person's body. Healthy red blood cells are disc-shaped, flexible, and move easily through blood vessels. Individuals with sickle cell disease have red blood cells that are crescent or sickle-shaped. These cells do not bend or move easily through the block blood flow to the rest of the body. The disease leads to debilitating pain, damage to organs and life-threatening complications, causing increased morbidity and early death. Sickle cell anemia is known to disproportionately affect Black communities. However, it can be found in many races and ethnic groups, including Middle Eastern, Latino, Asian, and Mediterranean descent. It is estimated that about 3,500 Michigan residents and over 100,000 in the U.S. are facing this sickle cell disease. The devastating effects of sickle cell anemia have gone on too far, and it does not have a universal cure. It is incredibly important to fund the research and bring some relief to those families who suffer from sickle cell anemia. Excuse me, my voice is a little dry today. House Bill 4308 would create a new specially licensed plate, the proceeds of which will go toward sickle cell fund to be distributed for research and further awareness. One life lost to sickle cell is one life too many. This legislation is another avenue for Michiganders to contribute to a cause that they are passionate about and make a difference in the lives to those around them. I am proud of this legislation, and I believe it will make an impact through the card plating process. Mr. Chair and members of this committee, thank you for your time today, and I hope you'll consider this important legislation.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. I'm not a public speaker, but let me attempt to make a plea. I'm here, of course, free of charge. I don't want nobody to think I'm being compensated to be here in any form or fashion, but I'm an advocate for people, and definitely this is one of the initiatives and projects that I invested time. As one young lady told me, I was talking to her who was a sickle cell patient, said, "I'm not sick, I get sick." And of course, she's only 18 at the time and had been in the hospital 4 times in less than 2 years. And I went in the emergency room one day, and I have never seen that many tubes in anyone in terms of dealing with pain. It's a painful disease. And let me just say this to you. I'm pleading on behalf of the plate. As you know, I introduced the legislation last session, and it passed with a vote of 103 members of the House and 37 members of the Senate. It showed the strength and the support, and also signed by the governor. We got bogged down in raising the dollars. The virus broke out, and as you all know, that basically government was challenged as well as private industry. We're proud to announce that we have raised the money necessary to pay for the plate. We asked for no money of state government, no investment of state government. We fully reimbursed the Secretary of State office for the basically the casting of the die for the plate, and also anything associated with promoting the plate throughout the state of Michigan. We were second in the nation. Alabama was before us with the license plate. Alabama legislative body, which, let me say, with a majority of Republicans, fully supported it, and a Republican introduced it. In Alabama, we were second in line. We challenged by other states. The only thing Alabama ever beat us in football, but nothing else. But let me just say this, though. This is our opportunity to allow a organization in the best interest of children and adults to have flexible dollars to provide treatment services. As we all know, the indigent population is very challenged for medication as well as treatment. They want to use these dollars totally for that particular effort. It's not for any other effort but to provide treatment and care for the population. Sickle cell, let me say, the center has been in existence for 50 years. And anyone, let me say, I always tell people, feel comfortable. Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy is the chair of that body, a very capable and respected public official throughout the state. And it gives me assurance that you can be confident that it's a worthy investment. But understanding the fact, it's just a flexibility for the citizens of Michigan, the opportunity to purchase this plate. And we're one of a few states in the nation to have this. And it's important to know that we appreciate what the state of Michigan have already done in various human service appropriation for sickle cell and other children's diseases in the state. But this allowed the public to participate in contributing yearly by purchasing their license plate. No state appropriation is necessary or needed to make this possible. And all dollars have already been raised for this effort. And certainly I appreciate your consideration today. Thank you, Chair.
Of course, thank you. So just want to make sure that I have the right person. So Representative, is this your brother back here? Okay. So are you, did you want to have any comment?
No, Mr. Chair, I brought in
okay.
Chris Bradley, who is from the Sickle Cell Association. He would want to make a few brief comments.
Yes, great.
Dr. Sherney, who's actually speaking in California at a sickle cell conference.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. So, Mr. Bradley, the floor is yours. If you could just hit that red button there so we can hear you.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, committee, for considering this. And I'm here representing Dr. Sherney, who again is speaking at a conference in California, who otherwise would be here, no doubt about it. Just to emphasize the commitment from our organization. Our founder was Dr. Charles Whitten, who basically started the organization and started the national organization to deal with sickle cell disease. Dr. Sherney is his daughter. So the history is very deep, the commitment is very deep, and we just want to let you know that we hope you will support us. And that other than her speaking engagement in California, Dr. Sherney would be here.
Well, thank you for sitting in for the doctor. We do have one question. Representative Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Former representative, thank you. And I supported you last time, obviously, on this program. It's not really for you. I'm wondering how many more places for license plates we have left. I don't know if Secretary of State sent anybody down to talk about it, but I know there's a certain number that they'll allow.
About one, I think.
Is it one, right?
About one more.
Yeah.
Of course, it was 20, I think, but you are the legislative body. You could always modify, change that.
There we go.
20, I think, was the limit. We were rushing to try to get in there, not only to beat Alabama, but also to be the next
We're going to
one.
beat Alabama
Yeah.
this year. Ronnie, thank you.
Thank you,
just
sir.
that
Thank you.
question. No
Thank you for the
problem.
question. But it was 20 was the max.
Yeah.
We were close to, we were like the last two, and I think it was one more left, potentially.
Thank you.
Representative Bruck.
Yes, thank you for being here. One comment and then a question. So I have 3 children that have a spherocytosis, hereditary, which is similar to sickle cell, is my understanding. But so I can definitely empathize with this. My question has to do with the monies will be raised. What if there was a license plate bill passed previously? I guess maybe I'm a new legislature,
That's all right.
but
That's all right.
it just disappeared then because you didn't raise enough
I was
funds?
the sponsor of it. The issue is that you have a certain time period to raise the dollars. We were not fully aware of the time period. We were not informed. It was not a part of the boilerplate of the legislation. It's a rule of the state legislative body passed some time ago, and everybody missed that point. And so we raised the money, and then the time had ran out. And of course, as you well know, that because of the virus, we were bogged down with legislation that needed to be passed. And of course, this needed to happen too, but we just couldn't rush it through after we found out at the late hour. But the dollars are there. $90,000 must be raised in order to pay for all the material associated with the development of the plate. And that's the challenge that most people run into, is raising the $90,000. But corporate and citizens, as well as legislators, stepped up and made the contribution possible to raise the money.
Well, I thank you for that, and certainly something we can support. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
And as with many things, COVID put a wrench in a lot of things. I can remember us being across the hall for your testimony the last time, so we had a bigger room for social distancing and those kind of things. So we're going to get it done this time, though, for sure. So do I have any other questions? Doesn't look like it. Thank you so much for your testimony. Appreciate it.
Thank you, members of the committee.
I do have one card to read in. Melissa Horst from the Secretary of State, or Michigan Department of State. Yes, Secretary of State. Neutral on the bill, does not wish to speak. Okay, so I need a motion to excuse absence. No, nobody, everybody's here. Okay, great. There being no, okay, sorry. Let me get back on track here. So, there being no business before the committee will stand adjourned. Thank you.